This is Rogers TV.
At this point, we have 202 cases. That's up by 18 from the last time that I spoke to you on Friday. One of these is from the long-term care facility outbreak in Bradford Valley, and the other 17 are in the community. We've got an age range between those in their cases in their 20s versus 70s. One of them is hospitalized, the others are recovering in the community on self-isolation or in the case of the case at the long-term care facility, recovering in the long-term care facility. If you look at how they became cases, 5 of them are close contacts with another case. 1 is travel-related, 6 are community-acquired, 3 are under investigation, and 1 is not determined. And of all of these cases, 1 is in Muskoka in Huntsville. If you look at our health stats website, it indicates that we have a total of 202 confirmed cases. 100 are recovered, 10 are hospitalized, and we've had a total of 12 deaths to date. We've had no additional deaths since I last reported. You will find some basic information on the site about how to protect yourself. I always emphasize the importance of people taking this on a personal level and doing what they can to avoid transmission, avoid becoming a case themselves or transmitting to other people. Because we continue to see community acquisition, you can get this in the community from other people. There can be people who don't have symptoms who can transmit it. And so everybody needs to do the physical distancing, 2 meters setback from other people, and avoiding crowds, really thinking carefully about when you need to go out, whether you need to go out or not, being very careful. For example, if you're going shopping and maintaining that distancing, frequent hand washing, and if you develop any symptoms, you should be putting yourself into self-isolation, not exposing other people, and seeking assessment. Our assessment centers are still in operation, and although they do have priority groups for testing, there remains additional capacity to test other people. And so calling in if you have symptoms and asking about being able to get tested and booking an appointment for that is a very good thing. It's good for people to know their status. It helps us because then we know about yourselves as cases, and we follow up with all cases and their contacts to ensure that people are in self-isolation. Right now, you'll find something new on our website, and that is a link to a presentation that provides information on our projection of cases, the modeling. Now, I've spoken to this before about projections to the future, the potential for cases, and so you'll find some detailed information on that, but I think the following is really the takeaway messages from this. What is most effective in these models is the physical distancing that we do, and also the case and contact follow-up that the health unit does. This can make an enormous difference over time as to the number of cases that we'll ultimately experience, and makes the big difference between whether or not we'll get a big surge of cases that could overwhelm our healthcare system or not. I think we're seeing evidence that we're having an effect with this approach. All of us together, a flattening of the curve, not a huge surge in cases, some stabilization from day to day of the cases that we get, And so that's very positive, but it speaks to the importance of people continuing with these control measures in your day-to-day lives, and of government policy about maintaining closure of public premises and non-essential businesses and services so that we are supported in maintaining these distances. I know that the Premier had spoken today at noon about new projections. I didn't actually get to see those myself, but my staff did, and I'll look at with interest at what is released and media coverage on that. But I understand that he did speak to the impression of us peaking at this time and the potential down the road to relax the control measures. So I agree that we are making excellent progress. I agree also that there will be a time when things are relaxed, the controls, but for now we still need to be very cautious about the controls we have in place. We need to be very cautious together about the physical distancing that we're all doing in order to avoid this from getting out of hand again. This could come back again if we relax too quickly. It could surge again. It's still circulating in our community. The potential for it is still there. It's the control measures we're doing together that's making the difference now. The other thing that our model shows is until we get a vaccine, we're going to have cycles of the virus coming and going over time. The province's projections had shown that before as well, and we therefore need to be thinking in terms of the long-term plan. The province right now is looking at a longer-term plan as to how we collectively are going to deal with this virus coming and going over time in waves. And those are complex decisions to be made, but I think it's important for people to understand that this is something that could go on well into next year, off and on over time. Periods where perhaps there's some relaxation of controls, and periods when the virus threatens to come back again that we have to put in place controls to keep it from surging again. So people can certainly have a look at that information. Otherwise, we've got our usual tables that summarize the data. For example, the age range showing it's the middle years, 35 to 64 with most of the cases, but people 65 and above make up the second largest number of cases. Indicating also that almost half of our cases have recovered, which is a very good thing. That a very large number of our cases are in self-isolation or in isolation in the long-term care facility, Bradford Valley, that's an outbreak. We have 10 cases that are hospitalized right now, 12 that have deceased. If you look at how people acquired their infection, the largest group is community acquired. So 65 of our cases are community acquired, 51 are travel related. There's still the potential with people coming back to Canada for travel related transmissions, so we still need to be looking out for that. And those who return still need to go into self-isolation required by law, the Quarantine Act, for 14 days to avoid possibly transmitting to other people. But right now, with it transmitting in the community, we all need to be aware and we all need to be doing the physical distancing to flatten that curve and dampen down that transmission. We have others who are close contacts of known cases as well, of course. So we've got a listing of all the municipalities and the number of cases per municipality. And one thing I would say is that on Wednesday we should have a new format for this that will provide some mappings by municipalities so that you could more readily look at how this plays out among the municipalities. We also have here our epidemiological curve, and it looks quite flat. Speaking to the good work that everybody has been doing to flatten the curve, we're not seeing a huge surge of cases. We can't know, of course, about the last 2 weeks. There's always that data lag before it comes in, so therefore it'll only be some time in the future before we could confidently say what's happening right now with cases because of that lag and people developing symptoms, getting checked out, getting tested, and results coming back to us. I am going to just pull up some information about Bradford Valley. So to date, there have been 35 laboratory confirmed cases at Bradford Valley Care Community. This is that's what we have on our line listing. We actually have an additional 3 other cases as part of that outbreak that reside in other municipalities outside of Simcoe, Muskoka. So of all of the cases, 10 are staff. 7 of those 10 live in Simcoe, Muskoka, and 3 live in other jurisdictions. This is actually up 1 from 9 from the last time I reported, because we had an additional case, but that one resides out of area. And then we have 28 residents as cases, up from 27 when I last reported, so an additional resident case. We've had a total of 4 deaths among the residents, none since I last reported. And a number of other individuals are quite ill, so we certainly watch with concern as to how they do. They are being provided with the best of care at the facility that is well equipped to manage their care in keeping with their wishes and the wishes of their family members. We've now tested all of the residents. As I'd indicated before, we went beyond the requirements that the province has indicated, and with the help of the assessment center at South Lake Regional Health Center, we've been able to test all of the residents and are working through testing all of the staff. And so among the residents, we got 208 negative test results. And among the staff, with the reports that have come back, not all of them have come back, but of those that have come back, we've had 27 that are negative. So I think this one will touch on a few other key pieces. The province certainly has been very concerned, the Premier very concerned, and rightly so, about the outbreaks in long-term care facilities and the deaths that have been occurring in long-term care facilities. And they've provincially and regionally with Ontario Health launched a strategy using the resources of hospitals and EMS and other agencies in the healthcare system to create teams of support for the long-term care facilities. And public health is very much involved in this, since we have authority to respond to outbreaks in long-term care facilities. So that is happening right now, that kind of team development in order to provide infection prevention and control assessment and support in long-term care is being built and implemented, and also the provision of additional human resources when needed for those long-term care facilities. I've already mentioned that the Premier had just given some information about modeling, additional new information about modeling of data for the province, and that there's optimism that we're near or at the peak. But that we need to continue with controls going forward to avoid it coming back. But there may be the potential down the road for some relaxation of the controls. Once again, I invite people to have a look at the model that we have on our website that we've done locally. I've certainly spoken before about the negative impact of these controls, this disruption on our lives, the isolation that this creates, people losing their work, and how hard that is on everybody. It's hard on our health, it's hard on our mental health. And so we put some information on our website at this time, Support for You, it's called, on our website, and it lists a number of supports in the community for children, youth, and adults related to mental health. I'd like to warn people about scams, internet scams, phishing scams, on the internet right now. Individuals posing as public health officials or professionals approaching you to get unauthorized information. And I'd like to assure you that when we contact you, it's by phone, it's authorized, we give detailed information about who we are and how you can follow up to ensure we are who we are. And if you have any doubt about a contact from public health to you, call us in order to verify or find out whether or not it's a real thing. I certainly wouldn't want anybody harmed in any way by somebody else's scam related to this. As I've already indicated, we're going to be changing the look of our HealthStats website on COVID in order to give more of an analytic approach and have some mapping for you. So there were some follow-up questions from the media. I've already spoken to the latest information about Bradford Valley. We had a question last time about the cases that we have listed versus those that don't live here, and when do we list somebody and when do we not. And I'd indicated that if somebody has been tested here and they're residing here while they recover, whether or not they have a home out of district, they end up being on our line listing. So there was a question about what data do we have about others who were tested here and then left to recover, went back to their home. I said I would look into that information. We're still looking into that information, so I don't yet have the data for you on that, but I will have it for you on Wednesday. There's a question here about how often do we get requests for follow-up for cases out of jurisdiction, because people were here and then left, and that's, I think, another way of stating the same inquiries. The last time, we'll have more information for you about that. And then one other thing I would say is that if you look at our line listing, there was one case that we removed, case 115, because it turned out that that individual actually lived out of area, so that case has been captured under the statistics of another health unit. So from 115 onward, it's a different ordering for people, therefore the new cases that you would look at would be from 185 onward. Another thing, a clarification for the media. Last time I spoke about us hiring new people, and that towards the end of the month we hope to have a number of new people online in order to do our case and contact management, and I spoke to having a number of new positions. Unfortunately, that got picked up as being new physicians in the press reporting, so I would request that that correction should be made. I was speaking to physicians, nursing, or other related health professionals who would be able to do the case and contact management. I didn't actually say physicians. So at this point, I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. We'll start with Chris Simon from the Barrie Advance.
Hi, thank you very much. The health unit posted on Twitter the other day about a shortage of wipes and sanitizers, and if you're going to the grocery store, try and bring it in. Dr. Gardner, can you just speak about whether or not you think this shortage could have consequences down the line, just in terms of the virus?
So certainly any shortages of sanitization equipment is a problem, given the potential for transmission via surfaces. This virus settles out as droplets on surfaces, and so frequently touched surfaces can be a way of transmission, doorknobs and such, and there is the need for disinfection, particularly in public places, workplaces that remain open. and that can be a challenge. Certainly, we as a health unit need to make sure that we are properly equipped for this as well, as do other work environments. I think it would be critical that we would obtain replacement for those supplies in the near future.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, Chris, Simon?
Not today, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to Erica Ankle from Collingwood Today.
Yes, I'm following up with what you were talking about earlier with the modeling in the presentation and how physical distancing will have to come sort of in waves. What are you looking for before you think these control measures should be relaxed in any way? Are you looking for the number of days without cases?
Thank you for that question. That's a complex question. I'm actually privileged to be on a working group at the province looking at that very question. And right now we're looking at some of the thinking that's been written up from other public health experts nationally, internationally about that. I don't think anybody has the definitive answer, but the categories of things that are emerging in that inquiry include indicators of the prevalence of the disease, such as case count going up versus down, the doubling time, like which I've spoken to before, how many days, when you look back at your cases, how many days has it been taken to double the number of cases? Everything needs to be coming down, not going up, right? So you have to be beyond the peak and well down before you'd be considering backing away from controls. We would also need to know that our system would be ready if you backed away from controls and then you had a resurgence of cases, right? So you'd have to know that the healthcare system is well prepared with ICU capacity and ventilators to be able to take a resurgence of cases. You'd have to know that the public health system is ready to detect the beginnings of a surge again, that ongoing testing is built right into the system and happening, that we still have our surveillance on the go. And you'd also need to engage with the community. The broader community would have to understand what we're looking for, and also understand where we would begin to relax. So I think you would probably begin by relaxing your controls in areas that are potentially least harmful. You would hold off protecting very vulnerable populations like long-term care facilities. I'm sure would be among the last things to be relaxed in the way of controls. So the community would have to understand that, and the community would have to understand the potential to have to reapply controls if you see evidence that it's going the wrong way again. I know that that's not a definitive answer. I don't think anyone at this time has a definitive answer for you. I do know that we also have the potential to learn from other countries that are beginning to do this, whether it's Spain allowing construction to happen again, or whether it would be Denmark having children go back to school but with strict social physical distancing in place. We have China relaxing some of its controls, including in Wuhan, where it all began. We have the potential to learn from their experience as we move in this direction. I think it's important to say that right now it's too soon. We're plateauing. We're certainly not coming down. We're still having new cases, so it's too soon to be actually doing it, but it's certainly not too soon to be asking when and how we will do it.
Any follow-up, Erica?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Doug Cross from Muskoka Region.
Hello.
Hello.
So my first question, you kind of touched on it, but it's going to restate it in your own words. I know it's been spread globally. The news is very divergent, even within Canada. There's different things happening that maybe. How important is it for people to really listen to the local health authority in terms of what they should do versus take national or international news where,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's different advice going on in different situations.
Thank you for that question. I think people are most influenced by what's happening locally, and therefore I would advise that people listen to what we're saying locally in Simcoe, Muskoka. We have our local statistics, we know our local situation. We are aligning well with the province, what it's directing, what it's requiring, as well as what it's advising. But I think people are more heavily influenced if they listen to a local authority, if they listen to information that speaks about their own community, about cases in their own community, perhaps about instances where there have been problems in maintaining the physical distancing in their own community, or local bylaws that might be in place, or local resources to help you. I think while it's wise of people to be paying attention in general to what's happening, including nationally and internationally, the local word, I think, is probably going to be most helpful for people.
Okay, and follow-up question I have, do you as a health unit have the power within the healthcare model to ask the province to try and stop movement into an area? Specifically, I'm thinking May long weekend, I'm out of Ampersand, ready to come up here. Can it be physically stopped through legal measures if it looks like there's going to be a huge incursion from another area?
Yeah, and I hear your concern now with the good weather of people potentially coming in large numbers north, and I know that there's been a fair amount of that already, people going to their cottages. I've heard that from local politicians, and I do believe that there's a potential for problem related to that. There's a potential for some of them becoming ill and potentially overwhelming, or at least burdening the local healthcare system. The potential for further circulation of the virus as people move about, and therefore transmission. So in my mind, I'm supporting the Premier's direction to people, or strong advice to people, that they stay home and not travel out of their community at this time for the time being, that the virus is still very much circulating, and that we need to continue this physical distancing approach to dampen it down and bring us down from the plateau. So at this point, all I can do is repeat the recommendation of the Premier. Of course, any of us as local medical officers of health have the ability to advise the province, and on quite a few occasions I've advised through communications to the Chief MOH some detailed changes that we wanted to see happen with regards to the direction, the protocols, the directives from the province. So certainly the idea that the province would do more about controlling movement of people is something I could do. To this point, I've provided some very basic advice on that front. I've seen some interesting ideas like the discontinuation of hunting or fishing licenses to take away the incentive for people to come to the north. I think ideas like that are more of a softer approach that could be considered, and I've communicated that to the province. As yet, I've not actually communicated that there should be some kind of moratorium on movement between communities. I haven't actually done that as yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll move on to Nathan Schubert from Moose FM.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Doctor, I just want to ask you about if you have any more information about the recovered case in Huntsville.
So going forward in the future, we're going to move away from indicating details about cases because of the protection of privacy. We've had some concerns when we get into too much information that individuals can be identified, and that is something that we have to avoid.
Gotcha. No further questions for me.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to Ian McClennan from Berry Tree.
You've already answered the question about indicators and targets and what have you. I know the press conference that they had on Friday in your statement, that example, I believe, like Northwestern Ontario, where they don't have a lot of cases, compared to somewhere like Toronto. Or so do they lift maybe gradually certain state of emergency, so to speak, in one area of the province, but not the other. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that, say in Simcoe County, where in Grey Bruce, I was talking to somebody at the Lynn today, where their caseload is much lower.
Yeah.
Would you prefer a provincial mandate, carte blanche, or are you open to possibly Grey Bruce lifting some measures before Simcoe County?
You know, that's actually been part of the discussion at that table, you know, that I spoke to. At this point, of course, we don't have the definitive answer for the province about exactly how they should approach all of this. There would be downsides and upsides of taking more of a local approach, but at the end of the day, we would need, because these are all provincial directives or orders in council, only the province can withdraw them, so we don't actually have the ability to withdraw them locally in a differential way between different locales. There could be confusion between different locations if the province was to enable that somehow, to say, okay, we're going to let you locally decide when you're going to lift these. So you could have confusion about what's required where. And also there's still the potential for disease transmission to happen between districts. So if you relax in one area, there's a potential for disease transmission to move from a neighboring area in if there's a higher degree of circulation happening. So that potentially is problematic as well if you take sort of a staggered local approach to it. But at the end of the day, you know, we've yet to actually fully figure out the overall approach to relaxing controls in a way that's safe, that allows us to ramp them up again when needed. That whole decision making has yet to be made.
Okay, thank you.
Any follow-up, Ian?
No, that's it, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to James Bowler from Coach Co.
Hi, Dr. Gardner. You did touch on this earlier. I just wanted to kind of focus in on it again. In terms of the word that we are at possibly at the peak here, but again, that doesn't really mean that we're all of a sudden going to start dropping off with cases. So I'm just wondering if you can just again go over the fact that we are going to see quite a few amount of cases coming through for the next possibly few weeks.
Yeah, thank you for that, and that's an important point, because even if we are plateauing or even peaking, it took us a while to get up to these number of cases. It will take a similar amount of time to go back down, and how well we go down will depend on how good we are about maintaining these controls, everybody doing their physical distancing, keeping in place the closures until we feel we can relax them. So it's going to take weeks before you go down, and even then there's, as I said, over the course of the next year and a half or more, the potential for it to recur, to come up and to come down again, because the great majority of the population is still vulnerable to this infection, still hasn't developed immunity. In all likelihood, the great majority of people are still vulnerable, so there's plenty of people for this virus to infect again if it recirculates back into the community. So until we get to the point where we've vaccinated the majority of the population, we create a vaccine and then distribute it and vaccinate everybody, we're going to have to manage a cycle of recurrence of the vaccine, or of the infection.
And just my quick follow-up, I did want to just talk about that Huntsville case again. I'm not looking for specifics on the individual. However, I'm curious about the fact that it is recovered when obviously all the cases we've seen before, you know, the testing has happened within a few days of symptoms showing up.
Yeah.
So what was the situation here? Why are we only hearing about it when it's recovered now?
So I can't get too detailed because I have to protect privacy, but it's hard for me to give you that information without violating privacy. So I think I am going to decline to answer on the basis of that.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to Mandy Webster from Rogers.
Hi, Dr. Gardner. Because we're feeling like we're in a peak right now, how long do you think a peak would last for? 2, 3, 4 weeks?
Very good question. I cannot know for sure. It will be weeks of it plateauing. If we're very fortunate, it plateaus and then it goes down. And I don't know at this point how far down it will go, and the point at which we could relax controls. You know, if you look at Wuhan and China, they were into it for the better part of 2.5 months in total, 3 months in total. And so that's one example of a place in the world that had that experience where they are starting to relax their controls. We've had our first case was March the 11th, our first laboratory confirmed case, but with their incubation period, they probably picked up the infection at the very beginning of March. So now we're into the better part of 2 months with this to this point, just getting to a plateau. And if you look at it, if it's sort of a symmetrical distribution over time, it would be the same amount of time on the other end. And I cannot be certain about that even.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to Mike Arcivides, CTV.
Yes, Doctor, I was just estimating earlier we knew when we had those stats, it was 12,800 population. Do we have any updated statistics on the ramping up of testing in Simcoe County and Minnesota?
Okay, so you would be interested, I think, in the testing that's been done here. And I would say that we've done a very large amount of testing at Bradford Valley Care Community, 500 plus samples that have been sent to the Public Health Laboratory for that facility alone. But other than that, I think you'd have to be looking at the statistics that we get from the assessment centers where the testing is generally done. And if you look at statistics up till Friday, because on the weekend not all of them are open, but if you look at Friday, there were 80 that was done at the site in Barrie, which is by far the highest amount they've had. Before that, the highest amount was 59. If you look in Collingwood, it's 36, which is the highest amount they've ever had. It's been anywhere between 9 and 35 before. I don't have statistics for Orillia or Midland. If you look in Huntsville, they had 6, which is actually lower. Wednesday they had 31, which was the highest they've had. Actually, I need to correct myself on that point. That was assessed. In Huntsville, 5 were tested on Friday. 21 was the most they've ever had tested, and that was on Wednesday. And if you look at Bracebridge, 15 were tested, down from the highest they've ever had tested, which was 21 on Wednesday. So there's some evidence of an increase, not necessarily across the board.
Not good enough, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you expect that people were going out in droves to get tested with that fear, or do you think there's that fear of going out, leaving the home, the confines of the home to get tested and possible exposure there from individuals? What do you think accounts for not enough seemingly tests being done in populations of, let's say we have 400, 500,000 people north of Newmont?
Well, maybe part of the answer is we're actually doing a good job of reducing transmission so that the cases are down. I'm hopeful about that. Part of the answer would be that up until recently we were indicating that the public health laboratory system had a backlog and therefore they needed to focus on priority groups. It's only been very recently that we've been telling people if they have symptoms and they should just seek contact with the assessment centers to get tested even if they don't belong to a priority group. I'm not sure how much awareness there is about that, and there may very well be concern among people that if they go that they get exposed. I know that with the booking system and the approach they take at these sites, that they're very good about infection control and people aren't put at risk. But there might be concern about people in the community that could still be the case, and there might be very well individuals who simply prefer not to be tested.
So
say you're satisfied with the people that is not on throughout Simcoe and Muskoka, or
I would say that if we had more testing, I'd be happy. I would say that we're doing what we can to raise awareness about testing. I'm happy that there is some increase in testing.
Okay.
Okay, that's all the names I have on my list. Did we miss anybody who joined us later?
Natasha still got one. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard Huntsville Doctor.
Yes.
Dawn Huddlestone. Let's go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you so much. I just have a question about the seasonality of this, Dr. Gardner. It may be too early to tell, but I'm wondering that as Ontario gets into warmer temperatures, if you're seeing anything from other places around the world that might indicate that there is some seasonality to this virus.
That's a very good question. It is new, so we can't be totally certain. It is a coronavirus. It's a respiratory virus, and typically they go down dramatically in temperate parts of the world during their summer times when it's warm. So we can hope that it goes down on that basis. We had that experience in 2009 with H1N1 pandemic influenza, where we had a wave in the spring in May, and then it went down dramatically, and then it came back in a much larger wave in October, November, December. So it's possible that we'll end up seeing something like that with COVID-19. And you raise a good point about what's happening in parts of the world that are perhaps always like summer, like the temperate parts of the world. The case counts in places such as India appear to be low at this time, but then again, it's possible that we're just seeing the beginning of the uptake and the surge. So I don't think we'd be able to say with confidence that they're not going to get a surge, despite what we see now, despite it being much more in the way of summer-like conditions there. So we shall see. I'm hopeful that it will go down with warmer weather, but we really don't know for sure.
Any follow-up, Dawn?
No, not for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, there was just one other person who didn't get a chance.
Natasha from Rockford today.
Okay, Natasha, you would like to go ahead, please?
I'm just wondering, what is the lag time for reporting? I heard, someone told me that one of the staff said that there was another death last night at Bradford Valley, but it's not reported. I'm wondering what the time frame is.
So we report our cases as of 5 o'clock the day before, and then any data that we get in the interim we end up including in the stats of the day that follows. I have not heard anything about an additional death at Bradford Valley yesterday, and if we had something that was of that nature, I typically also bring it forward within the day, even though it's more of a time pressure for us to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then I think we are at the end of our Facebook Live. Thank you, Dr. Gardner. And just a reminder, if there were any questions that came in on Facebook Live that had not already been addressed, we will bring them forward tomorrow. And we have back copies on our YouTube channel for anyone who has missed out and would like to review them. Thank you all.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a 80s based thing. So we talked it over and I thought, well, we kind of look different and I don't have the hair anymore, so I had to find myself a wig because I play Dave, and for 2 years we've done the odd 4 or 5 shows now, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been an exercise in exercising as well.
I was going to say
stretching, but it's just a lot of fun because I like to put on an act, as you will, because people come to see a show. They don't want to see a bunch of guys in t-shirts just looking at their shoes, right? So it's a whole vibe that we put through. So it's become a lucrative business, apparently, the whole tribute act thing. But yeah, it's fun. So that's pretty much all that I can deal with on my plate at the moment.
Well, it sounds like enough. Well, we can't not go through a conversation without talking about, and I hope I get this worded correctly, pronunciation-wise, Kahuna?
Cajon.
Cajon. I knew I was going to screw
most
it up.
people, most people will mistake. And so if you look at the word cajon, which is C-A-J-O-N, the J is silent in Spanish because cajon means box or drawer in Spanish. So that is the business, Jojo Cajon.
So could you tell me a little bit more about this? Because it's a very interesting business for one thing, and I believe are you probably a sole flyer in this industry with this?
Absolutely not. This is well, the cajon is centuries old instrument. It actually started in Peru. The slaves they would take crates off of ships because they didn't have their native instruments to play. They would take these crates off of ships at night. They would put them on end and they would play the thinner end, and they would get that drum sound. So years and years and years, the shape changed, the way that it actually works. The Spanish were the ones to put the guitar strings behind the head to give it that snare snap. And then, I just put snare wire behind it. And so I can't take credit for it, but the way that it came about was I was given an opportunity to run an open mic at Barnstormers. And after a few weeks, this fella came in with this box, and he said, "Oh, I'll just play drums, I'll just play on this box here." And being a drummer, I kind of know about, different kinds of percussion, but I really didn't know much about the box itself. So he started playing, and I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. So I look in the sound hole and to see how it works. The next day, you go to YouTube, any internet site will have plans on how to build them. So I just went to work. I bought all the tools that I needed, the wood, and took a couple of tries to tweak it to the way that I have it now. And every time I'd bring it to the open mic, someone would ask, "Hey, can you build me one? Can you build me one?" And it went from that to Kijiji, to my wife consistently pushing me with her support, going, "Hey, how about you bring it to Music Pro and see if they would consider selling it." So I had 7 that I built of different designs. So I took it there, and they compared the sound and the look to the ones that corporate companies make. And the drum fella there, Brad at the time, said, "These actually look and sound better than some of the ones that we bring in." So I was really quite surprised. So the fellas at Music Pro, Ted, thankfully the owner, Ted Johnson, and Jason, and Brad at the time, just embraced the business and have been one of the biggest cajon sellers for me. I mean, they sell other brands too, but it just took off. Like when I decided to do that, it just, you put the intention out to the universe, and the universe is listening. Okay, let's go. This is the ride you're going on. It's been amazing. So it's been 5 years now, just about 5 years.
Have you had other supporters locally carrying the drum?
Besides Music Pro, we've had Gilbert Guitars up in Aurelia, which originally they were here in Barrie.
That's right.
But up in Aurelia, there's Steve's Drums in Toronto. Steve's Music in Toronto. We've got Drumland. We've got Drummers Hangout. It's probably about 15 retailers. So we sell online. We sell word of mouth. I've got drums in Kuwait, BC, Italy. Wow. I mean, they've gone far and wide. It's been an amazing experience for me. And the way that came about was when I first started building them, I was working at this place, got laid off, and it was at that point, it was just a hobby, but I had decided that this is what I'm going to do. And with the love and support of my wife, Rita, she said, "Well, if you're going to do it, go full on." And it was at that point that it literally it was almost overnight. And so the first sale of the 7 that I sold to Music Pro, which I only intended to sell them one, they took all 7. They sold in about a couple of weeks. They asked me to build more, and then more, and then more. It was just, and I had to catch up to it. then I had to build a website. Then I had to, you know, so it was kind of a cool way that it happened. It was totally unplanned.
You kind of dove into it head first, didn't you?
Pretty much, yeah. I had to, because I mean, I had to play catch up, and I thought, okay, well, if this is what I'm going to do, then I might as well start getting serious about it. So, you know, paperwork, accountants, this, that, the other thing, filing the name to make sure that it was mine, correct? So there was a lot to deal with, but it's been a lot of fun, a lot of trial and error. You know, I do a lot of custom work for people as well. So it's been a lot of fun. You know, breathing in a lot of sawdust.
Nice.
It's
yeah.
just, yeah, it's been great experience for me, for sure.
Good. That's good to hear.
Where do we go from here? Time to dry all of your tears. Where do we go? Let's take it slow. Where do we go from here? Anything goes these days. Years vanish in the haze. Get a grip, it's going quick, like words that slip from off your lip. Hey, there goes another verse. Minutes like the sands of time, stolen without the crime. From the young to the old, live every minute, I am told. Hey, there goes another verse. Where do we go from here? Time to dry all of your tears. Where do we go? Let's take it slow. Where do we go from here? How you live your life's what matters. Don't get caught up in the chatter of TV talk shows, fritter batter. Hey, just crossed another bridge. Where do we go from here? Time to dry all of your tears. Where do we go? Let's take it slow. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Time to dry all of your tears. Where do we go? Let's take it slow. Where do we go from here? From here, from here.
Getting back to your own drumming again, do you miss the physical, actual playing of the drums? Or are you sort of enjoying what you're doing now? But as a drummer, drummers I know, they always go back to it at some point in their life.
For drumming, for me, it's a lot of fun because it's physical. It's you know, an outlet. You know, get frustrations out, whatever. I have a lot of different drumming influences, and I'm afforded to be able to play a lot of those different kinds of influences in the band that I'm in. I don't miss it too much because I get the pleasure to play, you know, guitar or, you know, other instruments, or, you know, in some of the music that I write for other projects. So I don't really miss it too much, and where some people will ask me the same question, well, you're a drummer first, don't you miss it? I said, you know, not lugging around all those drums, where if I can set up in like 15 minutes a guitar and a speaker and whatnot, as opposed to half an hour to 45 minutes, because I don't know if you've ever played drums. At the end of the night, you have to tear that stuff down, pack it up, and, you know, put it into a car, and it's not that much fun when you're, you know, in your 50s as it was when you're 19 years old, right?
The advantages of being a vocalist.
Yeah, it's another advantage. So when I sing and play drums is a whole other thing. But I still love playing drums. But being able to work on my craft as a guitar player is satisfying as well as an artist, you know. So yeah, it's you know, it's a little push and pull, but I still have fun with it.
Cool. And to round off all the things that you are doing, a zillion and one, I understand you also get into dabbling with jingles and a few other musical things that you... Tell us a little bit more about that.
I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years. I wrote some jingles for a couple of local companies here in Barrie. I actually wrote a jingle for a real estate agent a few years back. She was looking for something for social media purposes. And then I signed up with a company in the States that will distribute your songs for either movies, commercials, whatever. Whenever you hear music in a commercial or any sort of purpose, it's been created by, you know, someone like me, whether it's at a home or a professional studio. There's hundreds of thousands of artists that do this sort of thing now because you just download a DAW, you know, a DAW, and a laptop, and you have your own studio, like we're in here now. So I've done things, you know, like lounge and chill and, you know, different kinds of music. Because of my love of different kinds of music, I think that I can write different kinds of music. I can feel reggae, I can feel country, I can, you know, that kind of thing. So, and 9 times out of 10, I think I get it pretty close, if not right. So one of the cool things that I was able to do was a few years back, the CBC was looking for a Hockey Night in Canada theme because they retired the old one for some reason. And so I wrote a theme. Unfortunately, didn't make it into the top 10, but it got picked up by the company that I deal with and is streamed regularly along with some of the other music that I write. So, you know, it's a tough business to get into because there's so many that want to be heard. But I've had some success with it. Not huge, not yet. It's a numbers game. So the more children you put out there, eventually, you know, one of them will strike gold, right?
Growing up, did the diversity of music that you listen to, do you think it helped you with the jingles? Because obviously you're going to get challenged from all aspects, all demographics, genres of music. Has it been a bit of an asset, obviously, to...
I think so. I think, you know, if you expose yourself to all kinds of music genres, whatever it is, that's going to get into your DNA and it's going to come out somewhere. So as a young kid, I started playing in wedding bands at 15. So, you know, when you're playing polkas and waltzes and, you know, that kind of thing, and then you're getting into, you know, rock bands, and I was DJing at 16, so I was doing all different kinds of parties where you're playing country and dance and disco and you name it. So all of that stuff kind of got into me, and, you know, at some point it's going to come out.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Greatly appreciate.
Thank you for having
popping
me.
by, and all the best on the drums and your solo projects and everything else you have coming up. Thank you once again.
That. So here's a song called Hockey Rocks that I wrote for the CBC's Hockey Night in Canada. It's called Hockey Rocks.
At Kawartha Dairy, it's been 80 years of fresh, delicious dairy products and 80 years of incredible memories. We've come a long way since 1937, and it's all thanks to our amazing customers. Thank you, Ontario. Here's to 80 more years.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media. This is Rogers TV, Barrie.
Good evening, 007.
Tell me what you know, James.
James Bond. You'll light the fuse on any explosive situation.
Got your attention.
007 License to Kill. Is this really what you want? Living in the shadows? Always alone?
I don't stop to think about it.